So this is our opening and our list of authors for the final report. In fact, there were more people involved in the evaluation over the span of the project. So it was a very busy project and involved all sorts of different people. It was a really engaging and interesting piece of work for us to do. And as Alexis said, it was a collaboration between Ipsos MORI, the University of Stirling, and with our community researchers. So our project had three overarching aims: to tell the history, to tell the story of the Trust, to understand how it came to be and how it has functioned over the past almost 10 years. To demonstrate the impact and outcomes for the three beneficiary groups, and to demonstrate the place and impact of the Trust in the wider policy and practice context. Before I move on, just a couple of pieces of terminology. So we use the word beneficiary to refer to those people who have been impacted by trust projects. So we're talking about people living with dementia, unpaid carers of people with dementia, and young people with care experience. So I will use the word beneficiary in the presentation, and that's what I'm talking about. I'll also use the word awardee. Maybe I won't use it very much. I'm not very good at pronouncing it. And that refers to anybody who's received funding from the Trust. Now that might be an individual or it might be an organisation. So just to clarify those points. So the project ran for 2 years, a little over 2 years by the time we got the report written up. And we had four main work streams, four ways that we engaged with the work. Actually, before I describe that, I should just say this: the square paintings that you see through the presentation were done by Trust staff. So we had a workshop when we were finally able to get together towards the end of the pandemic, and we did some painting. So these are, they represent how staff feel about and represent the Trust. So our four work streams, we wanted to understand the Trust and how it worked. So we engaged with staff, with trustees and with awardees. So we engaged with 24 members of staff, 8 of the trustees, and directly with 62 awardees, but probably with a good number more over the course of the project. We engaged with stakeholders out with the Trust. Sometimes those were organisations that were linked to the Trust and sometimes organisations that didn't know very much about the Trust. And we engaged with about 300 organisations. We undertook secondary analysis of Trust documents. So we did quite an in-depth analysis of project and evaluation reports. Around 300 reports were analysed for the project. But we also looked at Trust documents, so documents about how the Trust was set up, how funding's been allocated, meeting minutes, all sorts of really interesting sources of evidence and information. And then our fourth work stream was data collection with Trust beneficiaries. So we engaged with 8 people living with dementia, 14 unpaid carers of people with dementia, and 46 young people with care experience. So the community research team, we've mentioned, Alexis mentioned them, I've mentioned them, we will hear from them in the seminar this morning, so I won't say too much about them, except just to say that they've been an absolute integral part of the work that we've done on the evaluation and have worked with us from the start. So in trying to understand the Trust, we looked at what drove the work of the Trust, what underpinned the work of the Trust. And what became very clear is that they are an organisation that is led by a set of principles. They have a clear understanding of what they're doing and why they do it. And the staff, and often those working with the Trust, hold a set of values that very much guide their work. And these principles and values are then enacted through ways of working and practices that kind of exemplify what the Trust is trying to achieve. And this very simplified diagram just tries to hook into some of those key elements. So investment is central to what the trust does. It doesn't go kind of half into things, it goes right in, it invests time. The staff in the trust, they work hard and they invest time and effort, and it invests money. And it invests those things in people. There's a huge value placed on people, there's a value placed on evidence, and there's a value placed on relationships and building those relationships. So that investment in evidence and relationships kind of ties into the bottom two parts of the diagram about the trust being a learning organisation, that it's always about learning, using evidence, understanding what's happening, developing evidence and learning, and the value it places on relationships and building meaningful relationships, whether that's with beneficiaries or awardees or with other stakeholders. And in the centre is always the beneficiary. So it's the beneficiaries within LCT are always placed at the centre of the activities that take place. So I've just got some quotes and images to further illustrate these points. My slides from here on in are mostly quotes, and that reflects the kind of LCT approach of voice and listening to people and what they have to say. So my presentation is very much focused on voice. So relationships are key in all of the work that we do, all of the work right across the programmes. Without that, the game's a bogey. So that's a member of trust staff. And then an awardee from the Young People's Programme. It's not been without its challenges, but we have got a really strong relationship. Our organisations, we have similar values. They have challenged us in good ways and vice versa. So that notion of value-led work and relationships. A key element of the relationships was the investment the trust put in. So the investment they put in to build relationships and particularly to build networks, the kinds of activities that they've done over the years to bring people together, to bring diverse groups of people together, people that might not normally talk to one another. So this is an awardee from the dementia programme, just reflecting the networking was unparalleled. I think the way they worked, there were other projects working like that, but I've never seen a trust pull people together so much, which was one of the really strong things. Learning, so every aspect of the trust's work was done with a kind of inquisitive approach to what can we learn from this, what do we do with that learning, how do we take that evidence forward. So a member of trust staff says recognising that we are not the experts and working in collaboration has been important to ensuring we gain a rich evidence base and share this learning as widely as possible. And for an awardee, this focus on evidence had helped them develop skills in collecting evidence and in using evidence. So an awardee from the dementia programme shares, to me, it's the best experience I've had with funding because it has allowed me to have the evidence to get it funded, so another project funded, and to do joined up working with housing, health and social care. Investment, so this notion of investing time, of investing money and of investing effort and hard work. So this is an awardee from the dementia programme. I thought they were brilliant as a funder because they gave us the free rein, but they were also helpful. You know, there was always somebody that you could turn to for advice if we needed it. And then this image represents the second quote, which is an awardee from the Young People's Programme. Just the whole kind of growing a plant, sort of like LCT provides a bit of, it's providing the nutrients, but it hasn't specified which crop to grow. So that kind of supportive investment in relationships with awardees. Beneficiaries at the core. So the image is the LCT is a kind of loud hailer in amplifying the voice of the beneficiaries. Beneficiaries are the expert. They inform every aspect of our work. The image represents people's voices being at the centre of everything and the trust being the amplifier. So these are a couple of quotes from people with dementia and an unpaid care of a person with dementia, but this is really just a tiny, tiny insight into the experiences people shared, or that were shared through LCT projects. So this is a person with dementia. The world opens up for me and I can do what I want to do, be able to have fun and able to have friends who are all in the same boat. It's amazing. And then an unpaid carer talking about an event that they had been supported to run. That's why it was such a successful event, because it was really for carers, by carers, and we led the whole thing. For young people with care experience, just open to supporting what we wanted to do. This was the board who are running a charity, putting all this financial trust into a group of young people. So young people reflecting on how the trust valued them, how it trusted them. And then this second quote, I would definitely say that being a leader, being allowed to be in charge of stuff like this and being involved in it has made me much more confident in myself. And leadership has been another theme within the trust, supporting people living with dementia, unpaid carers, and young people with care experience to develop leadership roles and leadership skills. So the third aspect of our evaluation, so the first one was about the trust, the second one was about the beneficiaries, and the third was about the impact of the trust moving out from itself into wider practice and policy contexts. So in terms of influencing others' practice, the way other organisations are working, it was very clear across the evaluation that was happening, that other organisations were adopting the types of approaches and working practices. So the focus on beneficiaries, co-production, participatory type activities, building relationships. So these are just a couple of quotes to support that. So the achievements made by the Champions Board are seen as crucial and a new way of working and something that will be in place forever. So that legacy, that notion of practices being adopted and being taken forward. Another, an awardee from the Young People's Programme. So we're looking at microloans, we're looking at the Grants Award, and certainly it was a trigger of a conversation from attending that event. We may have got there anyway, but it helped formulate the thinking. So again, LCT sharing ideas and evidence, and also supporting networks and supporting people to engage. In terms of policy influence, we did see some differences here in terms of the Young People's Programme and the Dementia Programme, linked, I think, to a wider context and a timing of the work of the LCT. But for young people with care experience, we could see direct influence on national policy. The independent care review, the promise, it was clear that LCT played a really important role in that. We could see significantly higher awareness among national and local policymakers about the work of the LCT and about what they were supporting young people to be doing. For people living with dementia and unpaid carers, we found significant evidence of positioning to influence future national policy. So there have obviously been changes going on alongside the evaluation, and the LCT is strongly positioned to influence policy as it moves forward. Extensive community engagement and collaboration with local policy actors, and influencing in terms of person-centred, rights-based and co-produced approaches being seen within local policy and within local and national organisations. So just a kind of little summary before I finish up. So the Trust has always talked about transformational and sustainable change. So change that has real impact and that continues. So for beneficiaries, this was about all sorts of different things, but it could be about confidence, it could be about gaining skills, about knowledge, about friendships, feelings of joy, feeling safe, belonging, taking part, leadership, becoming an influencer. For awardees, the longer term change we saw was around adoption of participatory practices, and upskilling in terms of collecting and utilising evidence. Further, within the kind of wider policy and practice, again, that the notions of co-production, of participation, but also challenging stigma around both dementia and young people with care experience, and people adopting new ways of working and new ways of talking about these people, about these groups. And then for national policy, the Trust has demonstrated impact that will be long lasting through their influence on national level policy for both groups, or all three groups. So just to say, I think you've been given the link, but this is the report, and you can access the report and also a number of films that we've made as part of the evaluation, which will also be seeing clips from today. So thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure to present the project this morning, and I will pass back to the chair.